I want you to imagine for just a second that the year is 1994.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah. You are at a wedding reception, the lights are low, the catering has been cleared away, and the newly married couple is swaying on the center of the dance floor.
Right, and we all know exactly what song is playing.
Exactly. It's the ultimate romantic ballad of the decade. The voice drifting out of the speakers is this flawless, impossibly smooth baritone singing, "I swear."
Oh, man. To listen to that track is just, it's to hear a masterclass in control.
It really is. It's so effortless, just pristine.
Yeah, it's the kind of vocal performance that feels entirely separated from human struggle. It became the definitive soundtrack to a million first dances because it sounded like, pure uncomplicated romance.
Frozen in amber, basically.
Exactly.
Well, now I want you to take that mental image and flash forward 11 years to 2005.
Quite a jump.
Yeah. You are standing in the blazing sun at a NASCAR race, the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And that exact same singer steps up to a microphone to perform the national anthem in front of this massive, roaring crowd.
But this time, it's completely different.
Completely. That flawless control is just gone. He is staggering. Visibly swaying on his feet like he's almost unable to stand upright.
Wow.
And when he sings, it is wildly off-key. It's so alarming that the fans in the stands and the millions of people watching at home, they almost universally arrive at the same grim conclusion.
Right. They think he must be completely intoxicated.
Exactly.
And it was an incredibly jarring broadcast. The public narrative just crystallized instantly. The assumption was basically, well, here's another country music star who has let alcohol and fame hollow him out.
Yeah, it's a familiar trope.
But the reality of what was happening inside his body at that exact moment was so much more complicated and frankly far more terrifying than anyone realized.
Because he wasn't drunk.
No, not at all. He was actually standing in front of thousands of people battling the physical effects of a tumor growing inside his inner ear.
Okay, let's unpack this, because welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking your sources, which is this massive stack of biographical details, chart histories, old articles, industry reports.
All the heavy lifting.
Right. And we are exploring the life, the music, and the really profound physical resilience of country icon John Michael Montgomery.
Such a fascinating figure.
We're going to track how a kid from Kentucky who was so incredibly broke that his truck got repossessed somehow became the definitive voice of the 1990s crossover country boom.
Yeah, his rise was just meteoric.
It really was. We will examine how he fought through immense physical pain, bizarre legal battles within his own family, and a rapidly changing music industry, ultimately taking his final bow on his own terms in December of 2025.
It's a massive story.
So to understand that pristine, effortless voice from 1994, we really first have to examine the absolute chaos of his early life.
And chaos is definitely the right word for it. He was born in 1965 in Danville, Kentucky. And his childhood was essentially spent inside local honky tonks.
Which is pretty wild for a kid.
Yeah, his father, Harold, was a local working musician. And Harold taught John Michael how to play the guitar when he was just a little kid.
No.
But this wasn't like a casual hobby.
No, not at all.
By the time he was 15 years old, he was already playing rhythm guitar in the family band, which, by the way, went by the incredible name Harold Montgomery and the Kentucky River Express.
That is such a great band name. It sounds glamorous in a very rustic sort of way. But, based on the sources, the reality was anything but.
Right. It was a tough life.
By his senior year of high school, his home life had essentially fractured. His parents got divorced. He ended up having a move-in with his grandmother because her husband had recently passed away.
And he's working these crazy hours.
Yeah, he's working late-night shifts, stocking the frozen food section at a local grocery store, just trying to help make ends meet. He was stretched so dangerously thin by all these responsibilities that he missed over 70 days of his senior year.
Which is just a catastrophic amount of school to miss.
Yeah, you can't graduate like that.
No, you really can't. The mechanics of his life just wouldn't allow for a traditional education anymore. So he ultimately had to drop out of high school entirely. He did get his GED later, though.
Right, because he had to prioritize basic economic survival.
Exactly. So he and his brother Eddie, who, by the way, you listening will likely recognize as one half of the massive country duo Montgomery Gentry later on.
Oh, yeah, Eddie Montgomery.
Yeah. So they formed a new band together called Early Tims, with a Z. They shared this tiny, cramped apartment, and John Michael took a job working at a liquor store just to keep the lights on.
While they hustled for gigs, right?
Yeah, playing places like the Austin City Saloon in Lexington, just grinding it out.
You're painting a picture of someone who is just barely keeping his head above water. Which actually leads into a detail from the sources that I really want you to walk me through. Because it sounds like a bad joke, but it is completely true.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
It involves a truck, a loan, and his fiance's grandmother.
Yes. It is the ultimate manifestation of how precarious his life was at this time. So he had managed to buy a truck. But because he was, scraping together rent with liquor store wages and bar tips, he started missing his auto loan payments.
Like a lot of struggling 20-somethings do.
Right. So the bank ultimately repossessed the truck. But the catch was that the cosigner on that auto loan was his fiance's grandmother.
Oh, man. That is just a recipe for disaster.
It really was. The financial fallout was so severe that his own fiance actually sued him for $5,000 over the repo.
That is unbelievable. Like, getting sued by the woman you were supposed to marry over a truck her grandma co-signed?
It's wild. They eventually settled it out of court, and surprise, surprise, he broke off the engagement entirely. He basically stated he just needed to focus completely on his music.
Probably a smart move.
Yeah. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the psychological foundation this builds. When your early 20s are defined by stocking frozen peas, playing smoky bars until 2 in the morning, and fending off lawsuits from your ex-girlfriend over a repossessed truck,
You're going to develop a thick skin.
you develop an almost terrifying level of hustle. You learn that survival requires a relentless, punishing work ethic.
It's the ultimate paradox, really. His actual life was the perfect blueprint for a gritty, down-on-your-luck, my dog ran away outlaw country song.
Yes, exactly.
But he didn't sing those. He became famous for these soaring, aspirational, flawless, romantic pop ballads, and that relentless hustle finally breaks his way in 1990.
Right, the turning point.
He's playing a solo gig at the Congress Inn in Lexington, and a manager named Estill Sowards hears him. He recognizes the raw potential and gets him a deal with Atlantic Records Nashville in 1991.
So now the stakes are huge.
Huge! He's transitioning from a struggling, broke artist to a guy with a major label backing him. But right out of the gate, there is a massive clash over his sound.
Yeah, this is a great story. Atlantic assigns him a producer named Wyatt Easterling to craft his debut album. But Montgomery is immediately unhappy with the direction.
He wasn't feeling it.
No. He felt the production style and the song choices were completely wrong for his voice.
Yeah.
So he decides to bypass his producer entirely. He calls Rick Blackburn, who is the vice president of Atlantic Records' Nashville division,
Okay, wow.
in the middle of the night.
Wait, hold on. I have to push back on this.
Go for it.
If I am a vice president at a major record label and a 20-something kid with a GED and literally 0 hit records calls my personal phone at 2 a.m. to complain about the seasoned producer I hired for him, I am hanging up.
Most people would.
Isn't that just classic entitled diva behavior? Like, where does he get the nerve?
I mean, on paper, it looks like extreme arrogance. But you have to view it through the lens of those honky-tonk years. Montgomery had spent a decade watching exactly how crowds reacted to his voice in real time.
Okay, fair point.
He knew his demographic better than the executives did. He knew that if he released an inauthentic, overly manufactured debut album, he would lose his one single shot at a career. It wasn't ego, really. It was a desperate protective instinct over his only asset.
And Blackburn actually listened to him.
Surprisingly, yes. He
Uh-huh.
recognized that conviction. He paired Montgomery with a new producer, Doug Johnson, and allowed him to scrap 6 of the tracks he had already recorded.
Wow. And that massive gamble pays off spectacularly. I mean, they released his 1992 debut album, Likes a Dance, and the second single, I Love the Way You Love Me, shit straight to #1 on the country charts.
Just an instant hit.
And then the real tidal wave hits in 1994. He drops the album Kickin' It Up, featuring the lead single, I swear. It sits at #1 on the country charts for 4 weeks.
4 weeks is a lifetime in radio.
It immediately crosses over into mainstream pop when the R&B group All For One covers it. Billboard crowns it the #1 country song of the entire year. And then he follows it up the very next year with Sold, the Grundy County auction incident, which becomes the #1 country song of 1995.
He is an unstoppable force at this point. But what's fascinating here is how the Nashville establishment and music critics reacted to that level of success.
They weren't happy.
Well, because he was dominating both traditional country markets and mainstream pop radio, critics immediately began comparing him to Garth Brooks,
Which, I mean, in the mid-90s, Garth Brooks is arguably the biggest musician on the planet. I would take that as a massive compliment.
Right. Montgomery certainly loved the comparison when it came to his commercial reach. The idea that his music could appeal to literally everyone in the room, but the critics were actually using it as a weapon.
Really? How so?
They accused him of being entirely derivative. They pointed to his exaggerated sort of hillbilly-ish pronunciations on certain tracks and the little yodeled yips in his vocal delivery. They claimed he was just cynically copying Garth's mannerisms to sell records.
See, why is it that in country music, the moment you reach pop-level success, people start accusing you of not being authentic anymore?
It is the central tension of the entire genre. Country music is fundamentally built on the mythology of the everyman. You know, the blue-collar worker, the struggling farmer.
Right.
So when an artist achieves global, polished superstardom, critics often view that polish as a betrayal of the genre's roots. They want the artist to remain the guy whose truck just got repossessed.
They want him to stay struggling.
Exactly. But what the critics missed was the mechanics of his appeal. Montgomery wasn't copying a formula. He was utilizing universal melodies. He was delivering the idealized version of romance that those everyday people desperately wanted to hear.
But delivering that idealized romance requires an immense physical toll. And by 1995, Montgomery is trapped in the relentless machinery of touring.
It's grueling.
You know, when you or I get burned out at our jobs, we can take a long weekend or use a sick day to recover. But that is not an option when you are the hottest commodity in music. You are doing hundreds of shows a year, shaking hands, recording new albums on the tour bus.
There's no off switch.
Right. And this is where his body starts to violently reject the lifestyle. He begins noticing severe inconsistencies in that famous, velvety baritone voice during his live performances.
The biomechanics of singing night after night are just brutal. The vocal cords are delicate tissues, and without adequate rest, they inflame and deteriorate. Montgomery consulted with specialists at Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
And what did they say?
They told him point blank he needed intensive rehabilitation. But driven by that same survival instinct we discussed earlier, he initially refused. He tried to just grit his teeth and push through it.
But biology always wins.
It always does.
He develops a persistent, agonizing sore throat, to the point where he has trouble even speaking normally. The doctors at Vanderbilt finally discover a severely infected salivary gland that requires immediate surgical removal.
Which is major.
Yeah. And to show you just how insane the industry pressure was, he actually performed his hit song Sold at the CMA Awards a mere 2 weeks after having surgery on his throat.
It is a staggering display of endurance, but it was completely unsustainable. And the breakdown wasn't just physical, it was deeply psychological.
Yeah, he was going through a lot.
By 1996, Montgomery hit a wall and took a complete hiatus from touring. Not a single concert that year. He later revealed he was battling severe depression following the 1994 death of his father, Harold.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Add in the compounding stress of a new marriage and the birth of his daughter in 1996, and his system was simply overloading.
It reached a crisis point where that same label vice president, Rick Blackburn, literally drove to Montgomery's private home to intervene.
Just showed up at his house.
Yeah, he sat him down and personally convinced him to stop smoking and drinking. Basically saying, you are going to destroy your instrument and yourself if you don't stop.
A real wake-up call.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because it shows how the business of fame infects even the most personal moments. During this dark period, he writes his very first credited song called I Miss You a Little. It's a tribute to his late father.
A very emotional track.
So tell me what happens with the music video for this song.
Okay, so he films a deeply moving music video. It incorporates photographs of his father, footage of his father's tombstone, and an actual audio recording of Harold's voice.
That sounds beautiful.
It was a beautiful, cathartic way for his son to mourn. But almost immediately, his own stepmother, Barbara, who was Harold's widow, files a formal lawsuit against John Michael.
Wait, what?
Yeah. She claims that as Harold's widow, she owned the rights to his likeness, and that John Michael did not have her legal permission to use his own father's image or voice in the video.
That is just gut-wrenching. How do you even process that? You try to honor your dead dad, and you get hit with a cease and desist from your stepmom.
It really illustrates the toxic mechanics of massive commercial success.
Yeah.
When you are generating millions of dollars, everything you produce is viewed as a commodity. Even your own private grief becomes a piece of intellectual property to be fought over in a courtroom.
Wow. He eventually wins that lawsuit in October of 1998, but the emotional cost had to be devastating. So he radically reduces his touring schedule from like 150 shows a year down to 50, just trying to preserve his sanity.
A very smart pivot.
And that brings us into the 2000s, which is era defined by incredible health crises, legal trouble, and a massive shift in how the music industry operates.
Right. And despite pulling back, he was still remarkably relevant. I mean, he scored a massive #1 hit in 2000 with A Little Girl, which was controversially based on an urban legend circulating through email chains.
I remember those email chains.
Oh yeah, we all got them. Then in 2004, he releases Letters from Home, which connected so viscerally with soldiers deployed overseas that it actually resulted in him performing at the Pentagon.
That's a huge honor. But while his cultural footprint remains strong, his body is just continuously failing him. In 2001, his label's country division shuts down, forcing a transfer to Warner Bros.
More industry chaos.
Yeah, and that same year, he shatters his shin. But instead of canceling his tour, he goes out and performs 71 consecutive concerts leaning on crutches.
The hustle never stops.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to the hook of our deep dive, the 2005 NASCAR incident. I need you to stop here and explain the biology to me, because I don't understand how a tumor in your ear makes you look and sound like you are heavily intoxicated on live television.
This raises an important question about how we judge physical impairment. He was diagnosed with an acoustic neuroma. So think of the 8th cranial nerve in your head as your body's internal gyroscope and its main audio cable, all bundled into one tight cord.
Okay, gyroscope and audio cable. Got it.
Right. An acoustic neuroma is a tumor that grows on and heavily compresses that specific nerve.
So it is literally suffocating the signals his brain relies on.
Exactly. Imagine trying to precisely tune a delicate acoustic guitar. But while you are listening for the pitch, someone is actively twisting the tuning pegs, and the floor beneath you is violently tilting at a 45-degree angle.
That sounds like a nightmare.
That is what Montgomery was experiencing. His equilibrium was shattered, making him stagger, and his pitch perception was deeply distorted, making him sing off-key. Yet the machinery of the industry still expected him to step onto a track in front of millions and deliver a flawless vocal performance.
That is horrifying. And the public assumption that he was just drunk was so deeply unfair.
Very unfair.
However, the assumptions of substance abuse weren't entirely baseless, which adds another layer of tragedy to this. Because the sheer amount of physical pain he was enduring just to keep performing led to very real legal trouble.
Right, the 2006 incident.
Yeah, in February 2006, he gets arrested in Lexington for a DUI. The police search his vehicle and find prescription painkillers, specifically Endocet, in an open container, alongside 2 concealed weapons.
And on a police blotter, that looks like an artist completely spiraling out of control. But the mechanical context of his life at that moment is crucial.
Oh, so?
During the court proceedings, his legal team proved that he possessed a valid legal permit for the firearms. And the Endocet, he had completely valid prescription for it, because his body was so battered from decades of touring that he had just undergone a major hip replacement surgery.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about the hip replacement.
Yeah, so he took a plea deal, paid a $600 fine, and the weapons and prescription charges were formally dropped.
Well, even with the charges dropped, the reliance on painkillers to survive the surgeries and the grueling travel schedule took a heavy toll. By 2008, he has to cancel a month of shows to enter a rehabilitation facility.
Yeah, his body was just giving out.
He was dealing with severe sleep disorders, acute anxiety, and an abuse of those very same prescription painkillers.
And while he is fighting this brutal internal battle, he is also waging a professional war against his own record label. In the mid to late 2000s, the entire music industry was experiencing an existential crisis.
Right, because of the internet, digital downloads, Napster, the death of the CD.
Precisely. Physical album sales were plummeting, and major labels like Warner Bros. Were in a state of absolute panic. Instead of nurturing long-term artist careers, they became obsessed with corporate mergers to consolidate power.
So they stopped caring about the veterans.
Yeah, they started desperately chasing younger, hyper-specific demographics, trying to manufacture quick hits to offset their losses, and completely ignoring the loyal fans who actually wanted traditional country music.
Yeah.
Montgomery found this environment creatively suffocating.
So he makes a massive pivot. In 2007, he leaves the major label system entirely. He founds his own independent label called Stringtown Records.
Taking back control.
Yeah, he basically looks at Nashville and says, I am done playing your corporate game. I'm going to make the music I want to make. He releases his final full studio album, Time Flies, on his own label in 2008.
It was a profound declaration of independence. He essentially opted out of the rat race of chasing radio charts. He never released another full studio album after 2008. But importantly, he never stopped being a performer.
He didn't. And that leads us to the resilient final chapter of his story. Without a label forcing him onto a tour bus, without new albums to promote, he just kept touring through the 2010s and into the 2020s on his own schedule.
Just for the love of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because underneath all the trauma and the industry nonsense, he just genuinely loved connecting with a live audience, even as his body continued to throw obstacles at him.
The physical toll was a lifelong companion. I mean, in 2019, he had to undergo yet another vocal cord surgery, this time to remove a polyp.
It just never ends for him.
And then, in a genuinely terrifying moment in 2022, his tour bus overturned in a major crash near the Kentucky-Tennessee state line.
That could have been fatal.
Absolutely. He suffered broken ribs. But in a testament to his resilience, he released a statement to his fans shortly after, assuring them he was recovering and eager to get back to work.
It's like he was made of iron. But eventually, the road has to end. In January 2024, he officially announces his retirement from touring.
A well-deserved rest.
Yeah, and he gets to take this incredible, validating victory lap. He steps onto the stage at the Grand Ole Opry to sing Be My Baby tonight, but he is joined by Post Malone.
Which is just a brilliant pairing.
It really bridges the gap between the 90s crossover era he helped invent and the massive pop country crossover stars of today.
It was the ultimate vindication of his legacy. The industry that once criticized him for being too pop-leaning was now celebrating him as a pioneer.
And his actual final concert is the perfect closing note. December 12th, 2025. He doesn't hold it in a massive stadium in Los Angeles or New York. He books Rupp Arena in Lexington, Kentucky.
Right back where it all started.
Exactly. Right back in the same town where he used to hustle for tips at the Austin City Saloon. And he doesn't fill the stage with industry executives. He performs surrounded by his family. His brother Eddie, his son Walker, and his son-in-law Travis Denning.
After 30 years of the music machine trying to mold him, break him, and ultimately replace him, he walks away entirely on his own terms, surrounded by his bloodline in the exact state where his story began.
So what does this all mean when we look back at the life of the guy who gave us I Swear and Sold? What is the ultimate takeaway?
I think if we look deeply at this story, it forces us to confront a really uncomfortable truth about how we consume music. We use an artist's songs as the utilitarian soundtrack to our own lives. We play I Swear at our weddings. We play their anthems when we celebrate.
You make their music about us.
Right. We demand that the artist freeze in time as this perfect, flawless avatar of our own happiest moments. But while we are using their voice to soundtrack our joy, the human being producing that voice is often living a life of extreme physical and emotional chaos.
That's a really powerful point.
We prefer the pristine illusion of the recorded track over the fragile reality of the singer. It asks us to consider, what does it say about us that we demand immortality from artists whose very humanity is what makes the music resonate in the first place?
That is a fascinating perspective to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. And we encourage you to keep asking questions about the real human stories behind the songs that define your life.
There's always more beneath the surface.
There always is. Because the next time you're at a wedding and the lights go down and you hear that impossibly perfect baritone singing, I swear, well, I guarantee you will never ever hear it the same way again. Keep diving deep, and we'll see you next time.